welcome to the Virtual CMO Podcast. I'm so glad you could join us today.
Great. I thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Been looking forward to it for about, we booked this maybe a month ago. So I've been thinking about it probably every other day. Like, what are we going to talk about? What's the agenda?
Hey, that's awesome. I'm so glad that you're here. You know, just before we started the show today, we were talking a little bit about COVID and the craziness that's going on with the pandemic. And I know that one of the sports that you're into is you love disc golf. Can you play that? Has that been something that you can do while the pandemic is going on?
Yeah, it's actually the perfect pandemic sport to play. The worst case scenario, you might be around, one or two people from your house, maybe a friend or two. You don't play in large groups, rarely more than 4 people at a time. And it's over acres of woods where they've cut out different paths. And you're really essentially throwing frisbees through the woods. It's like hiking with target practice. And, your distance from other people, 400 or 500 feet from the next group. And you just go through 18 holes like regular ball golf, but you're throwing discs or frisbees, what some people would recognize it as, in the woods. They're actually weighted frisbees, so you can throw them 300-400 feet. It's you get out some aggression, some stress. Chucking a piece of plastic through the woods. You hear the sound of the hitting trees. You're smashing chains because we don't have a hole like in ball golf. There's a chains, almost like a chandelier if you think of it, where the disc would hit the chandelier and drop into a basket. So almost like a casino reward, like you hit a slot machine, like cha-ching, 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 cha-ching. There's this sound element to it. It's peaceful, but then you're making noise at the same time. So you get the best of both worlds.
A while back, I thought I was going to be really hip, with the youngsters. And I got my Sony PlayStation with the Move. Remember those with the lighted glow tips and whatever? And one of the games, yeah, exactly. And one of the games that they had on there was Frisbee golf. And it actually worked really well with the Move. And so I am familiar with the sport, but virtually, not having played it in real life, but having played it on the PlayStation.
Well, if you ever do it, if you get into it, you end up carrying a backpack. It's about 20 pounds. You're going to hike 2 to 3 miles, and I'm much more north than you in Pennsylvania. We have the mountains, so you have elevation changes. You're gonna put in 2, 3, 4 miles carrying that bag. It's a good workout. Plus all that stretching and throwing and the tension of ripping that disc through 300 feet. There's a lot of flexing, and I forget, is that isometric? I think that's the type of exercise that is. But it's a great workout.
So what's in this backpack? Just the different frisbees?
Yeah, different frisbees. They're not great for an audio podcast, but I'll show you one on screen here. They're weighted and they're tailored to fly different ways, just like in ball golf, you have putters and drivers and wedges. Well, you have similar types of things. You have a driver disc, a putter disc, and they're just cut different ways to cut through the air differently. Whereas a driver is very tapered with a real sharp edge. So that can go the distance, whereas a putter has more of a bull nose, and it's not designed to travel far, but it's designed for a little more accuracy and for shorter distances.
Well, if it's anything like real golf, I would definitely need one that floats.
They do make those as well.
I would need that. Jeff, I'd be curious to know. So obviously the Virtual CMO, we're a marketing podcast. Talk to me a little bit about your journey and how you ended up in the profession of marketing.
Yeah, it was a long journey, and one I didn't even know I was on at the time. About 20 years ago, I started selling skateboards out of my parents' basement. And I would have kids come into the house at all hours of the night, 2, 3, 4 in the morning. Sometimes they were out skateboarding late at night. And I'm sure my neighbors started to question what I was doing over there. And one thing led to another. The business started to grow. And I was able to establish, I bought a building for $11,000.
Wow.
And this was in 2002. And I put in a skate park, a skate shop. And for about 8 years, I got into manufacturing. But I also started buying, AdWords, like in 2002, 2000. I was even on Overture, if anybody out there remembers the old ad network Overture that Yahoo eventually bought. Buying keywords for a nickel. Like, it was the craziest thing looking back now.
Nickel.
And I had my own social network. I called it a lounge. I didn't know what it was, but I had a message board. I was making video content on YouTube. And all these things started to add up. And when the business folded in '08, people started asking me questions like, hey, what's this with the website? How do I get this to rank better? How do you do AdWords? And I was like, well, this is all you do. Click, 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 and it was done. They're like, whoa, that was pretty good. And they would start recommending me. And all of a sudden I realized these last 8 years weren't just, running a business. I was building a skill that's valuable to people all over the place. So I started doing a lot of consulting. And eventually I landed a job at a media company. And then where I've been for the last 10 years as the digital marketing director, I landed in automotive, and I'm stuck. I'm hooked. I love the industry, and it's a very complicated process. Still on four wheels, like skateboards had four wheels, but now I'm selling, helping to sell cars on four wheels. So I've stayed with the same category, at least with four wheels, but the price point has gone up quite a bit.
I definitely want to dive into the whole selling of automotive products, because that's such a huge segment. But I'd love to talk a little bit more about this idea of, buying keywords for a nickel to where we are today. So things have certainly changed, right? In terms of Google AdWords, in terms of Facebook marketing, in terms of really where people are spending a lot of money online. Talk to me a little bit about what you've seen in terms of some of the changes with the digital marketing spend.
Even funnier with Overture. Overture used to show you everybody's rank and everybody's bid. So if you were like at 7 cents and you wanted to be number one, it was 9 cents. You like, okay, I just bid 10 cents. I'm number one. And in that competition where it didn't exist in 2002, 2003, people figured it out. And it has gone where, the money has flown where the eyeballs are. People are searching on Google, they're on social media, and those costs have skyrocketed. We're seeing a little bit of a downward turn with Facebook, which we can get into in a little bit. But where people went, the dollars flowed, and as that competition increased, so did the cost and the cost. So you really had to look at, when I had skateboards, I was only making maybe $10 a board, and when those costs got to 25 cents, 50 cents a click, that it takes you 10. You have to also consider for skateboards, you have a lot of 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old boys searching, clicking. That you start to realize how much that AdWords starts to cut into your budget. So it's that it's not difficult. I don't think anything we really do is extremely difficult. You have to understand it. You have to have some science behind it. It's a little bit of science, a little bit of art, but you have to have structure and the discipline to really manage what you're doing. And that's where that didn't exist when they're nickel. You didn't have to know too much. It was lucky. It was like fish in a barrel. The searches were there. The keywords were cheap. Now the searches are there, but the keywords aren't cheap. So you better know what you're doing on the back end. You better see how many clicks it takes to generate that sale. What's that sale on average generating for you on the back end? So the knowledge has gone up. Much more of a management experience, the business management, to really understand the whole back end situation.
Now, I bet when you were using Overture, it was mostly a manual process. And today we're so fortunate to have so many different tools that can help us with this. Not only tools that are provided by the platforms themselves, but third-party tools. In your business today, what tools do you find are especially helpful in doing your keyword research and actually placing the buys?
So a lot of this, we do a lot of this in-house. So I do use a lot of the Google keyword planner. I use a lot of SEM Rush. I use tools like that. We've actually, especially with the pandemic, we've reduced our AdWords spend significantly. And I'm fortunate enough to have a marketing department of 9 people. I have content creators, videographers, and photographers, and we've gone all in really over the last 2 years, and especially now with the pandemic, we've gone all in on generating our own interest. So making sure that we have 2 or 3 videos coming out a day. We're doing long format videos, sometimes 26, 30 minutes, and that's where we've put our focus on lately. With the back to AdWords in regards to that, some of that we do outsource still. So we have companies that are managing some of it on our behalf. Some of it is automatic. A lot of display is being generated with our inventory in real time. So we're able to really match the search interest with the physical products that we have in stock. So if somebody's looking for, say, a Honda Civic, we have, not only do we know what the inventory is, what the current offers are, but we have images to back that up. We have videos to back that up, and we're tying all that in together by outsourcing the AdWords by now.
One topic that we haven't talked about much on this show yet is the whole idea of retargeting. Do you do a lot of retargeting ads? So if somebody's coming in and doing a search or comes and visits your website, that you can then retarget advertising specifically to them?
Yeah, it's about 10% of AdWords budget overall. So we are looking at behaviors. I'm very interested in behaviors, and I look at the way I structure my audiences are mostly URL based. So I'm looking for, did somebody visit a URL that had the word Civic or Honda Civic in it? And then I'm putting all those people into a bucket. I call my audiences buckets. I have that bucket. I have a Honda Accord bucket, a Passport bucket. And from there, I'm looking for people who are not just on my site looking for it, but through dynamic audiences, I'm able to look for other people who I don't know about who are doing that same behavior. So I'm not only retargeting, but I'm also constantly seeking other audiences. And with automotive, you're really only selling in a 10 to 20 mile radius of your dealership. It's most 80-90% of your sales are so hyper local. So I'm just looking for that tight niche where people who are searching for the vehicles that I have, and I'm matching those behaviors to the actual physical inventory I have in stock.
One thing that I've noticed over the years with automotive sales is that people are doing more and more research online. There's so many great tools, not only pricing tools and whatnot, but tools that allow you to configure automobiles if you're going to buy something new or find the right pre-owned vehicle that you're looking for. And so rather than there being a static advertisement or listing for that particular automobile, we've gone to a point where there are 30 pictures of a vehicle and a virtual tour of the inside of the vehicle or of the engine compartment or whatnot. You talked a little bit about video before. Have you really seen video transforming the automotive industry in terms of what a consumer expects to be able to find online?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at YouTube channels for car dealers, they're not going to YouTube to watch a car dealership video. They don't want to read a car dealer's blog. They don't want to watch a car dealer video. What we've been able it's kind of almost like you're watching like a Motor Trend show, but it's our salesperson in the series Ride Along taking the customer through the back roads of the city. From Greensburg, up and down the hills, around the bends, accelerating, braking, showing you the lane keeping assist. And where most people don't watch videos of a car dealer online, we have almost 18 million organic views of our videos are online. If you look, I sent some links to you earlier in the show notes, but people watch our videos from all over the country, and they're telling us, that was instrumental in their decision to buy a Honda or buy an Acura. But locally, people are coming in and asking for the salesperson who did that video. They want to talk to Justin, they want to talk to Steve, and they want to meet that person who they spent 26 minutes in a car with. Before they even came to the dealership, they spent all that time researching online. They've been to the manufacturer sites, they go to YouTube, and then they find this local video, which also ranks really well organically in the search engine. So, you'll see our listings, and then you'll see our video listings almost all the time. But the customers are having these experiences with the sales team before even meeting the sales team, and then they want to meet the sales team when they get there. So it's really it's helped streamline. That's something we've been doing for a few years, but with COVID and everything happening, it's kind of sped that up where people are more interested in the content that we're creating.
It's interesting that you say that because we're recording this episode in the middle of July in 2020. I think it was just the other day I saw an ad, I believe it was for a Lexus, where they were doing a FaceTime video with the salesperson who was driving the car and somebody was asking them questions as they were driving the car. So what it sounds like you're talking about is not necessarily a live kind of FaceTime video, but a pre-recorded video with a salesperson actually taking that car for a drive. But this was something that you implemented before the crisis hit, and it's been hugely popular, crisis or no crisis.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we've had a videographer, full-time videographer on staff, which is fairly rare for the auto industry. I would say he's been there 4 to 5 years now, and we've been doing, and the key was that branded series. It wasn't a video of our dealership. It was a show called Ride Along, or a show called First Drive, that was branded by our dealership. Our logo's on there, but we don't really talk about us. We talk about the vehicle and the experience that the customer is going to have in the vehicle, and that was hockey stick growth. That was one of the things that we've implemented that was just straight up. Like it changed the game for the way that we thought, because we thought people want to hear about us and hear about what we do and how we take care of the customer. They want to hear about what that car is going to do. Most people, I always say that most people don't care. They're busy. They got to get to soccer practice. They have bills to pay. They don't want to hear about you. They want their problem solved, and they want you to solve it for them, and then they want to get on their way. They don't care much about the dealership after the sale was made. They come back, every 3 to 6 months for service, but they don't think about us for another 2 to 3 years when it's time for another vehicle.
You mentioned earlier that you manage a team of, I think you said about 9 people for the dealerships that you work for. So what does everybody do? How do you keep everybody busy? It sounds like there's a lot of content creation, but do you have everybody segmented into specific roles?
Yeah, I'm a big Basecamp person. I've been with Basecamp project management software solution for probably 2011, 2012. I'm coming on 9 or 10 years with Basecamp. And one of the things that we do is we have projects by dealership. So a lot of what we do gets repeated, and we have processes. So we have a graphic designer, and the graphic designer will create all the assets from the offers that we get from the managers. And once those are released from her, I assign them. I have a Facebook manager. I have a content creator who also posts these on Google My Business, on my Google My Business listings. We also have a person who manages our promotions and specials on the website. So everything kind of flows in this way. And then once the specials are ready, the videographer kicks in. Our photographer is always out there making sure every vehicle has a photo of it. We have 2 photographers on staff, 1 part-time. We have about 1,000 vehicles every month that need shot. So
Wow.
we're turning over vehicles. We got to get the new ones need photos. So we're always taking new photos. And the last thing we have, I'm very big on reputation management. We have a person dedicated specifically to making sure everything that gets posted online, every review gets a response, positive or negative. And we're always, we're relentless about that and making sure that, all these little channels are covered, by everybody's segmented to cover each of those channels all month long.
I'm glad you mentioned that because, Google My Business and then the review aspect that's part of that is so important for many businesses, especially in-person businesses that people visit. So how do you manage that? How do you actively seek reviews from people? Do you send out notices after a purchase is made asking them to do a review, or do you just manage reviews that people leave on their own?
Uh, Rarely are we surprised that we get a review. I put a process in place about 5 years ago, and I actually launched it when I was out of state. So that's one thing. You don't want to surprise an organization with a new process when you're not in town. But I launched I don't filter anybody. If you came in for sales, if you came in for service, 24 hours later, I'm asking you how we did. I don't even filter that. I send them directly to Google. I send them directly to Facebook. Some people's processes will actually try to filter, and they'll send an email. Did you have a good experience? And they may have 1 through 5. If you pick 1 through 3, they send you to a form that goes back to the manager. If you pick 4 or 5, they'll send you over to Facebook or Google. I don't filter that. I ask everybody unconditionally, how was it? Would you let somebody know because it may determine if they want to choose to do business with us. And 5 or 6,000 reviews have come in since we've implemented this across all of our dealerships. It's the number one thing that drives business. And then we're responding to every single one. And I was on the fence. I always respond to negative, and we bring it to the manager's attention immediately, and we reach out to that customer. I never thought we needed to respond to the positive. I was kind of on the fence, like, as we talked about earlier, I came from skateboarding and punk rock, and your reputation of what people said about you is what was important, right? You never talked about yourself. You never said, I'm the best skateboarder. You let other people speak for you and tell the story of you. So I always took that into the reviews that, yeah, somebody said we were positive. I shouldn't intervene. They're saying that. But what we found out is the more that we interact with reviews, the more that people interact with us. And even Google likes to see that, hey, these things are being published on Google My Business. This Google My, give it a little bit more elevation. They're managing this. This is a more relevant listing than maybe somebody who has only 4 reviews and it's a 3.5 star and they never respond to any of them.
I think that's great that you don't filter, because I think reviews are such an impactful thing for a business. And I think too many businesses don't pay enough attention to the impact that reviews could have for their business if they would just have the guts to sort of go out and seek them and then allow them to filter in.
Yeah.
But I think that's great. And to see that it's had an impactful role in your business growth, I think that says a lot.
Yeah, it's 100%, one of the first things people are going to see. They search your business name, and they see 300, 400, 500 reviews, and you have even a 4.4, 4.5, 4.6. You're in that middle range. You're golden. You're probably beating most of the competition. You're definitely beating competition who isn't even monitoring that. They're probably like a 3.8 to 4.2. You can always tell people who monitor it. You always get about a half a point bump, just from taking care of it. And if people think about it, most people don't leave most businesses angry. Most people are pretty happy. People buy cars, they're stoked. They just bought a new car. They've never been happier in 4 or 5 years. Of course they want to leave a positive review and show off to their friends. So, we're banking on that. We're delivering a great experience. I know that. I trust in the process that the sales team's doing, and it's reflecting, because, like I said, it's not filtered. That when you see our reviews, that's 100% everybody has been asked. So, if they're angry, they're going to leave a review. A lot of times we reach out, we take care of it immediately, and the customer offers to take it down. That's great, even better. Or they'll update it and they'll say, hey, I had a bad experience, but they fixed it. They stood behind what they said they would do, and they fixed it. And it happens. There's things that get lost in communication, or expectations were different. But we always reach out and we make sure that we take care of it.
Most of what we've been talking about here is digital marketing. And I think when people think of car dealerships, they think about those ads that typically run during the evening news at night, and the big presence that automobile manufacturers have online or on television.
Mm.
Have you seen that diminish as part of your business and digital really pick up the slack? Or is there still a large marketing presence on television for you?
No, none. And about 4 years ago, I wrote a paper. I presented to the whole organization. I said, when I do things digitally, I can get eyeballs on our content, on our vehicles, to our website. I'm spending on the low end 80 cents, on the high end $3 to $4, $5. I said, and somewhere in that range, it's a couple bucks to get attention on these vehicles. Whenever I focus on digital, my budget to end results. I said, but then when we look at everything that we spend, we look at all of our marketing dollars being spent. That includes our newspaper, our television, magazines, local things, all this stuff. You would think that the call to action on every single one of those is go to our website. If you watch the evening news, the last thing on that commercial is visit localdealer.com. So that traffic should show up somewhere else. And so when I looked at that number, everything that we spent to all the activities that were happening, we were like at $10 to $15 per action. So I'm like, well, okay, well, what else do we know? We also knew that Google came out with the ZMOP paper was a big deal 4 or 5 years ago. Well, it was still a very important paper. But they also in that paper say that 95% of all automotive transactions happen because of an online interaction. 95%. So I'm like, okay, half of our budget is digital, half of it's traditional. 95% of it, we can probably catch that traffic through third-party inventory portals, through our own SEO, on our websites, through Google AdWords, through social media. I bet we can find these people. So a year, 2 or 3 years ago, we enacted that paper, and we went to almost $0 traditional, and we've been that way. I won't say the amount; it's a substantial amount of money was cut from 10 automotive dealerships over the course of a year, and we have not regretted that decision one time. Like not at all. We've had continual growth, website leads. And we have cut all print and all television. That's been running for about 3 years now.
That's fascinating. And it makes so much sense because once you're online, once you're doing things digitally, you can track it so much better versus what you do with an over-the-air kind of ad.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of the best things and one of the worst things that happen in digital marketing is they say everything's trackable. It is, yes, but one of the problems we have in automotive is a lot of those transactions, they're happening offline. So there's a lot of after the fact matching that you try to do with, if you had in-store visits, in-store customers. So yeah, I can track. I know all the actions that are happening. I know what the cost per lead is. I know what it costs to get a phone call. But all those sales actually happen. There's no checkout button on an automotive dealer's website right now. That checkout happens, in the store. So tying that back is one of the biggest hurdles to overcome in automotive.
It's sort of moving in that direction, right? You've got these startups like Carvana and others that are allowing you to buy right through an app. So that connection is becoming closer and closer to a reality.
Yeah, it's happening. I mean, we have some tools that do it. We can walk most people through the process, but even with all the things that we do, I also know that 65% of the people who come into a dealership never even contacted, never made a phone call, never sent an email. But you ask them, how did you find out about us? Well, I did a Google search. I've been on your website. You just can't identify a lot of them. But when you ask them and you do a sourcing study at the end, you'll see like almost all of them were still online.
Jeff, I know that cars aren't your only interest in Frisbee golf. You're also a trivia guy. Tell me a little bit about your passion around trivia and what you do there. You've got your own show, don't you?
It's really a guy who doesn't know much about trivia, hosting guests who aren't really trivia experts. It's a lot of fun. It's a show I've been doing since 2015. It's called Stuff I Never Knew. It's a weekly trivia game show podcast where each week 3 players from around the world, they're going to call in. They battle it out over 3 rounds of trivia, and we have one winner remaining at the end. And I've been having just a ton of fun doing it. I'm about to hit 80 episodes this Friday, so I'll have my 80th episode out already over 5 years. So that I've done it in different seasons, and a season runs until I get tired of it, and then I take a break for a while.
That's awesome. What a great way to meet people from all over. Where do you get the questions? Are these things you research yourself, or do you pull them from a game, or where do you find the questions?
Yeah, so round one is always like a 50-50 chance. I'll do, is this a candy bar name or the name of a town, or is this a fish or a heavy metal band? And one of the things that like fish are great because they all have like steel and they have like these metal sounding names, and so do heavy metal bands. So round one, I write all the questions for. It's a 50-50 chance, just kind of a fun game, something silly, some little play on words. And then the other rounds I'll source from around the web, things I've been reading about, things I've been researching about. I'll even tailor some of the questions to my guests. Depending on where my guests are located. I have a show coming up on Sunday on Friday, where my guests are in Singapore and Thailand. So I looked at the halfway point between the two of us, which was still Russia, surprisingly. Russia was halfway between Pennsylvania and Singapore. And so the first round questions are going to be, was this invented by a Russian? So they have to tell me, I'll give them a like frozen orange juice. Was that invented by a Russian or not a Russian? And so we'll go from there and do fun little games like that.
That's terrific. I love that. Podcasting is such a great medium, and it's an opportunity to meet so many people. I know on this show, I've interviewed people from really all over the world, Japan, Australia, the UK, Africa. And it just shows how small the world really is when you get on a medium like this. And it sounds like what you put together with this trivia show is just a lot of fun. What's the name of the podcast?
It's called Stuff I Never Knew. You can find it at stuffineverknew.com, or just search Stuff I Never Knew on your favorite podcast app, and you'll see it's just a little light bulb with some like a little bolts around its head. You'll be able to find it anywhere you look.
Jeff, I'll make sure to put that in the show notes so that people can check you out. And I really appreciate the conversation today, because I think in your particular role, you cover so much of what many digital marketers are facing today. And it's been very interesting to hear the insights that you've had about how you apply that to your particular role in the automotive industry. So thanks so much for sharing all this with us.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
All right, great. Thanks. And again, I'll put all that in the show notes. So Jeff, thank you very much for being on the show today.
Oh, thank you.